Mhm. Hey, hello.
Hey, Wawego.
Hey, habari yako?
Jema sana brother, mambo vipi?
Fiti sana, fiti sana. How was your day today? I know today is Friday night in Kenya.
Yeah. I had a fantastic day actually. I spent much of the morning at home and then went out to meet an author friend of mine whose book I was buying today actually, and we played some football and made some noise and then yeah, went back home. So it was a nice day.
Oh yeah, because I saw some of the posts you posted. Football day, the new turfs that has been taken so in Kenya. Those you can just six aside, which is it's really
Yeah,
nice.
really, really nice actually. Yeah, man. Like I think it's also given us opportunities to bond as boys, because life is so busy and people barely have time to meet up these days. And for some of us who, we don't club, we don't hang out in places like that, I think it's really a good like alternative, to sort of have a social life, and it's really healthy as well. So we are making it something. Um, what is this? What's the
An
word?
in,
What's the word?
an
Like we
intentional
want to
place.
make it,
Yeah,
yeah, like we make it happen more often. I forget the English word, but like
yeah.
next week we're meeting a team to play. So yeah, it's really nice.
Oh, yeah. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this live. And I hope it's. I think one set selfishly is for me personally, but also maybe for a few people who will listen now or maybe listen to it later.
Yeah.
Yes. So maybe just a background quickly, because I've been very interested. Because even now, okay, I moved to New Zealand. I would say 5 years ago now. So this is my fifth year being here. And before that, I did a stint in working with the youth in Rwanda. Then came back to Kenya. Then I came here. Before that, I was in Liberia for
Mm.
I would say nearly a year. But of course, before that in Kenya, working with so I've been working with the youth, but more in the spaces of church and community for the last, I would say 10, 12 years. But I think what has been interesting for me is just because of course there are boys and women, but there is this, even now coming to New Zealand, because I came here and I expected, because New Zealand is a bit ahead in terms of talking about mental health and having this open space from men and boys, but still I feel even living here there is a gap. And just following you, reading a post and seeing your interview, that gap of, I feel there are very few spaces where men can really be themselves, or there is this contradiction where 30 years ago, 50 years ago, what a man was expected to be, I don't think is what a man is expected to be. Or maybe the expectations have changed, but the man has not gone through the revolution of what does it mean to be a man today.
Yeah.
And even more interesting, because I've been married maybe 1 year, 6 months now. But
Okay.
it's interesting what what my wife expects of me now, and growing
Yeah.
up in Kenya more than 30 years ago, it's so different.
Yeah.
She wants me to be vulnerable, but she still wants me to be strong. And I'm like, how do
Yeah.
I, what does this mean to you? And now that we're expecting a baby in the next like 1 week with my
Ooh,
wife.
what? Congratulations.
Yeah, in like 6 days, 5 days.
Oh
So I said,
gosh.
yeah, and so I have a few questions, but we'll tiptoe between going back and forth.
Yeah.
So, like I've seen, and I'm sure in Kenya, you've seen the recent past in terms of just people trying to talk about toxic masculinity and all that. But I'm thinking for myself, who I only saw my father once. What are your thoughts in terms of that aspect? In terms, for me, I'm thinking I'm becoming a father without having had a father at all. But when I look at my friends, I would say more than 90% of them are coming from single mothers or sometimes single fathers, which is a tiny minority.
Yes.
What do you think? What happened? to society that even now most people are growing up like me, which is not unique. Even here, it's a bit different, but still, what happened?
Mm.
That the
Yeah.
single parenting happened.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. And single parent in the sense that mostly it's the mothers who are left with the children.
Yeah.
Um, of course, there are many things. There are many things, and for me, a lot of them are more political than they are social or cultural.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you find that in the beginning, first of all, nurturing was appointed for women. And so, from the whole concept of childbearing and child nurturing and, caregiving for children, it has been taken, socially as a woman's responsibility, in fact.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, centuries on centuries upon centuries, the value of a man has been associated with how much he can produce. And this is sometimes one in regards to the children he can produce,
Mm-hmm.
two, the amount of wealth he can produce, and the amount of power he can produce. So you find that when it comes to power and wealth, if we look at the total percentage of men in the world, very few men attain that. So majority of the men are lost in between getting that power and still be regarded as a man in social constructs, right?
Mm.
So that in between causes a lot of internal conflict because you really get lost in who you're trying to be versus who you really are, and plus who your environment expects you to be. It's a huge pressure. Again, beyond that, while when a woman gives birth, the child is there, the work is real. You're supposed to take care of the child, blah blah blah. For the man, when he can't find work, that is it for him. He loses purpose.
Mm.
And so for what I've seen for most parts, because of now the way how capitalist economies have been set up, men get lost in all that. It's, I call it a virus. Like you get caught up in trying to understand who you are plus who you want to be that you can't really get to, plus the models of masculinity you're seeing around you where everybody celebrates a rich man, everybody celebrates the rich white man, and everybody wants to be like him. He shows up in movies, he shows up in business, he shows up in representations of wealth, and we don't question how that came about. It's almost like we have accepted that is the way things are, and that is how it should be. So that is just one section. The other section is the political side, where um, the man is almost like has given himself that mandate to govern the world, right?
Yeah.
This is politically mostly, like, I mean, if you look across the whole globe, we have very few women or female legislatures, or women in top seats for that matter. And so you find the way how patriarchal governments are set up. When it comes to things like wars, most times it's the men who are sent out to go and
Yeah. Good
fight,
point.
to go,
Yeah.
yeah, all these hard jobs, and like they're very dehumanizing, and you're actually going to fight with other men from other countries. All that commotion. It affects families in the long run and in the larger scale. So again, even like with the fight for independence in Africa, so many men were displaced because they had to go to the jungle and fight for long periods of time. So you lose touch eventually, man. You lose touch with yourself, you lose touch with your family, you lose touch with the world. You get caught up in the struggle, and that's what's still happening today. Many men are caught up in the struggle. So the difference is we are not coming together for that to fight this common struggle. The way the system is set up, it's been made in such a way that we are actually fighting each other in that struggle, such
Yeah.
that it's like the people who are rich and are managing wealth and resources are just watching us, fight one another. And yet the women are already coming together with the feminist movement and meeting up and saying, we want different for ourselves. The men are not doing the same because they're still caught up in between. I want to be that traditional strong man, and I need honor and respect, but still I cannot access wealth like that.
Yeah.
So it is a very complex thing, and I mean, you're seeing more and more single parenthood where mothers are the ones taking care of these families, and because I mean, most times their husbands left, most times, and the stories I hear is like the man just stopped growing, and the woman wanted something different. They wanted more, but the guy just was there, because I mean, they never really had the resources to be better. They don't know what to do. Yeah, so it's a lot.
Yeah. And so, because especially living, because I have, of course, all my family is still back in Kenya, and I live in New Zealand, which is considered a Western world in a way.
Yeah.
So it's interesting as I observe men and boys here in that space of growing and transitioning into this world that, like you're saying, I need to, like in most traditional setting of Christianity, the man needs to be a priest, a prophet, a provider, protector, and all this. So the aspect of nurturing has not been put in there. And just before I ask you how you landed into working as a therapist, more so trying to figure out as men. So like last 2 months ago in Australia, which is close by New Zealand, there's a boys' school. So there's a boys' school and a girls' school. So the boys' school was asked by some of it was prefects and teachers who were told to go to the girls' school, and they were told to go to this girls' school and apologize on behalf of the male race
I
for
heard
the
that.
for toxic masculinity and patriarchal and everything. And so these are high schoolers boys. They're still teenagers. They're still in that, and they were
Developing.
told, and even their parents were not informed that this is happening. So they had to go to the girls' school and apologize on behalf of all baggage and issues. And it was like, this is a bit, for me, it was a bit crazy, but I was like, what goes into the mind of a young boy who's been bombarded by all the issues of patriarchal and all these toxic issues with men? I don't know what would be a thought in terms of boys now who teenagers, and I would say even in Kenya there's an expression through gengeton and that is movement and everything. So in a way, maybe the more vulgar you are, or the more you express yourself sexually, it means you've matured as a man. I don't know. What are you seeing with young boys? I would say specifically teenagers.
Well, first of all, even the story in Australia, because we got it here as well, I felt like that was really abusive to those kids, because it was non-consensual also, and very like irresponsible of the administration to take those kids. That's traumatizing actually, because most of them don't even really understand what's going on. They don't even know who they really are yet, even though they've already started exhibiting some of these behaviors. A lot of that is really usually subconscious, and that related with the expression of gengeton here, and just majorly what teenage boys are like the whole world.
Mm,
um, Growing up in an exceedingly fast world where there is so much information going on, and their parents are also people who are sort of still looking for themselves, that identity crisis. And there is the world, the way we are today, like the commotion around just being alive, like it's so much. It's not like the way things used to be there before, where social structures were stronger. Right now, people are more isolated. We are living in silos, all this like nuclear family. We're not living in villages as things were back in the day. So the pressure on parenthood is way much more than it was back in the day. Now it's not like the shamba you're digging is for the family, it is yours, you know. The food you're looking for, it's you and your family and your, children and all that. Education is hella expensive. Housing is hella expensive. Um, it's hard to get a decent job, like there's so much pressure. And again, those are very seriously political matters, because much of the countries are rich, but the resources are going to very few greedy people. That is just what
Yeah.
it is all about. It's about
Yeah.
resources. So that's how it trickles down. So the higher the pressure of having to attain resources, it means people are spending more time looking for these resources for survival. And when you're living from that point of view, you would have no time to give attention to what's really important in your child's life.
Mhm.
Um, and so, I mean, even with children who go to the biggest schools, like that thing still gets them, because parents have to work so hard to have enough money to take you through good quality education and all that. And in between that, again, there's still family wrangles going on, and just so much chaos in the environment around you. So I feel like today there are more platforms for these kids to express themselves, and that's why we are seeing this explosion of expression,
Mhm.
um, where, like, they're getting to like they're recording songs with their phones, and putting them on YouTube, and it's really popular. And there's this a lot of sexual innuendo in their artistic expressions. And for me, as I see it, for me, it's like two things. There is the need to express themselves, and then there's the cry that we want to be heard. We
Mhm.
want to be heard at all costs. And because, a lot of us still majorly really grew up in very conservative homes, where our emotions were never given space to come out. It gets to a point where rebellion is the way out. So you find, like, even a lot of these guys who start off with this type of music, it doesn't have longevity. Like, they don't do that for 10 years or 15 years.
Of course
It
not.
becomes something, it comes, and they don't, that music, that art doesn't help them invest in anything, you see. So it's not robust in that sense, because it doesn't really come from the core. It's almost like an expression of pain. But the way it comes out, the way we are reading it as, oh, these guys are rude, these guys are vulgar, these guys are all these things. They are actually actively expressing themselves. And they are a product of a society as well. Only we are not having that conversation. They are a product of society where sex had been taboo. Sex is still majorly a very sensitive subject. They are
Yeah.
also a product of a society where corruption is like on a magnificent level, and impunity as well, where people in authority keep on stepping on the powerless in society, and they're not paying up for that. Nobody's accountable for that. So when a teenager sees all that chaos happening, they might as well just do what they want, because at that time their bodies are changing really rapidly. And again, because they don't have any information about what's going on, it's almost
Mhm.
like when you and I were in high school, and we came through a porn magazine and we wanted to hide it. These kids are not hiding it.
All out there.
Yeah, man, like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna say it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting world. So maybe just for someone who'd watch, I don't know, maybe I'd want you to just introduce yourself and also how you found yourself in these places where you're trying to focus on men in terms of men healing and safe places for where men can talk about their trauma and how they're feeling in that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, Onyango Otieno is my name. I'm also known as, or mostly known as Rix or Rix Poet. I am a trauma therapist. I am a writer. I'm a poet. I'm a mental health advocate. I really love the arts as a way of expression. The line of work I'm doing today is nothing near what I anticipated to do with my life. I previously wanted to be a journalist, and then I couldn't finish my campus education because my parents weren't stable enough to finish my school fees, and there was a lot of instability at home, like the wrangles and fighting and everything. I basically grew up in an abusive home where my dad struggled with alcoholism, and um, he was exceedingly violent towards my mother for so long. And I just grew up watching my mother so helpless. And also, my aunties who are married to my paternal family, most of them really struggled with their marriages because my uncles are also fairly violent people. And so
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with so many questions about, you guys are telling me I'm supposed to grow to become these people. That just didn't sit well with me, like my uncles. And you grow, and then you start realizing, oh, this violence is beyond your village. Like, it's in your neighborhood, it's in the community, it's on the TV, it's in the movies, man. Like, it's everywhere in the news every day. You're just hearing stories upon stories of, oh, a man has killed somebody, a man has raped somebody, a man has stolen something. Hey, yo, man, like those things were many, man. Hey, so I was like so curious, like, you guys, like, isn't something wrong somewhere? Like, so I mean, because my dad also really battered me physically and was emotionally manipulative towards me. We weren't really the good friends, and my mother was the calmer person. I was attracted to that calmness, and dad didn't like that I was closer to mom than him.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that brought a lot of friction between us, to the point that he often blamed my mother for like separating him from us. And yet it was a very child choice, because you get attracted to who treats you better.
Yeah.
And for me, I think the way my mother raised me up as well, like my mother didn't really care whether I was, because I'm a firstborn in my home. She never really cared. Just because I'm a man, I'm supposed to just sit at home and watch as she did everything in the house. She made sure I could manage our house from as young as what, 12, 13 years. She made sure I learned how to cook, how to wash dishes, how to clean after myself, how to do my own laundry. Like, I had to be self-sufficient. And that was like basic. Like, that was, I was meant to believe, to understand that is supposed to be basic. Like, nobody's gonna come and do that for me.
Yeah.
So you grow up and then you realize, oh, it's not the same everywhere. Like, it's in other places. Boys just chill. They just sit down and wait for food to be cooked, and they expect the girls around them to do all the work. That was really strange to me, because that's not how I was taught. So when I started speaking up against these things, of course, again, there was so much friction about this. So something happened in 2015, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a time when my parents had another serious fight, and this time I wanted to take a risk to sort of talk to them. So I called my parents to a meeting, which was a risk, like it's like a suicide mission here. And I sat with my mom, and I wanted to understand what's going on, because I was really tired. I think around 26 years old, 27. And I mean, my mom and I talk, and she was just telling me what's going on. Like, dad wanted to take over the family business, and he was like threatening her life and all that. So I sat down with my father, and of course, my father said a lot of nasty things about mom and how we are close and all that. And even threatened to curse us just because we don't agree with him and just a lot of stuff. But there was one statement he made that really changed my life. In all that mayhem, he said something, and I quote that, "I don't come to you with my problems because you think I'm weak." Yeah, that was it for me, because I felt a twitch go up in my mind. I was like, what could make you say that?
Mhm.
You know, I'm a child. I've grown in this house for the last 26, 27 years. I know all your weaknesses. I've seen them. So what do you mean? Like, that doesn't make sense to me, that I think you're weak. If you were to be weak, like, I've seen all those weaknesses. And I
Mhm.
mean, these are things that we see every day in this house. So what do you mean? So in his mind, he was coming off as this God, this perfect God of a father who had no mistakes, and he used to say that he's never wronged anybody, he's a good man. Like, he used to say those things. I was like, yo, dude, you live in another universe, man. Like, us guys know you differently, you know. But that statement is the thing, and I was like, I want to understand where that comes from. So it was the first time I actually humanized him and started seeing him as a child who's also going through his own journey, you know. And so I started looking for the stories, and that's where now I was speaking to my uncles, and my mom was telling me about how my dad grew up and how his father was also really violent, having married three wives, and having fought in the Second World War for the British in Burma, coming back home, not being the same man. And that was a lot of PTSD that nobody picked up. And I came to realize that a lot of African soldiers who fought in these world wars were just bundled back to their villages, and they were never the same people. I have countless stories of you here, like, a guy tells people in the house to take cover because the war is still in his head, or sometimes, like, I have heard stories where, the mzee climbs a tree because he's trying to, like, look at the enemy. Like, yo, this is serious stuff. So there was a lot of PTSD that came with a lot of these African men, and also just post-colonial Kenya, really, and Africa for most parts. Like, we were traumatized. We were traumatized a lot. Our men who were bundled in these concentration camps, and there was so much political tension in the country, and police brutality that was meted mostly upon men. That those things were very traumatizing. So our fathers had a lot of PTSD, and my dad just got it from his father, and by
Yeah, just
design, I was supposed to inherit it. So it made so much sense, and I was like, grandpa probably got PTSD from the war, and he just came and transferred all that pain upon his family. He had 30 children, three wives. That is a chaotic village, and we were like, I have
wow.
so many cousins, man, like some of his names I don't even know. Like, we are so many, bro. So you can imagine all of us growing up in that chaotic environment. And for those 30 children that my grandpa had, all of them fighting for their father's attention, it's impossible. You can't be there for those kids. Yeah, so I used to write about these stories, and around gender-based violence, and about the stuff I saw at our home and everything. So I had another bout of depression in 2017, and that's when I came out for the first time with my story that I've been suicidal, and this is not new, and I really want to understand this. And my life changed again from there. And actually, looking back, there are so many dots that make sense today, that my upbringing was connected to my depression, it was connected to my PTSD, it was also connected to my masculinity, because I was being trained or conditioned to keep quiet with my pain just because I take the form of a man. And my family wasn't comfortable with me talking about my pain
I can
because
imagine.
yeah, like, yo, you're talking about me, I'm your father, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can't keep quiet anymore. I'm dying. I just can't. So I was really, like, facing rejection from these people. And sometimes my uncles would come on my Facebook and say things like, these are family issues. You're supposed to not talk
Keep them
about them. So
secret.
Yeah, so I would really straight up just block them because I had fought for my voice for so many years that it was impossible to keep me silent anymore, you know. Um, and then as I grew and you start understanding the world, you're reading, you're being exposed, you just see it for yourself. You just see there's a problem with us guys. Like men have issues. Men do have issues, and I wanted to get into them because I've seen how my mother has really struggled at home to communicate with my father, and how, again, even me in my younger relationships, how girls found it hard to get through to me because I had this hard wall up because I don't know how to trust. I don't know how to be vulnerable. They can't read my mind. I don't know how to talk. There was just so much going on. And I'm like, I want something different. I want to be different. I don't want to have the same struggles my father had for the rest of my life. That's going to be crazy, you know? So I think those are some of the motivations that got me deeper into, first of all, mental health advocacy and having the masculinity part of it. Because I felt even today, actually, even in my therapy practice, still, it's more women who are reaching out for these services, and I am always really like encouraging men to come out and start going for therapy, and it doesn't even have to be paid for. Like, just develop a community for yourself, you know, and find people, find boys, find men who you can talk to about real things. Not that every time unakutana na wasee unaambia msee unaweza unaendea msee na shida yako, msee anakwambia sawa, twende kwa bar tukunywe, utakuwa sawa, you know. I'm
Yeah,
like, we are drowning. Like, it is not a mistake that the highest rate of suicide come from men globally.
yeah, even
Globally.
here.
Pandemic, bro. Like, that is a pandemic, and it's like the statistics say men commit suicide 4 times more than women globally, man. Like, that should make the world stop, you know. So the confusion also comes from the fact that the people who are generally in power in society are men, but men, and the majority of the men in the world are very powerless, very, very powerless, and the way they've been conditioned to think that women are supposed to be below them. So a person who feels powerless forces somebody who wants something different to be below them. That's gonna be conflict,
Yeah,
straight up. So it is confusing.
mm. Oh, yeah, thank you for that. And I think I'd want, because this topic is wide, but I want to focus with a big one which you've mentioned in your story, and I'll mention, which is violence. Because there is violence, like you've said, and I keep telling people here, when you look generally at Africa, there is violence from slavery, where the strongest men and women were taken away. Then colonization comes generally across Africa. Then there is that aspect of World War One, where some men were taken. World War Two, where even I think now my grandfather died 5 years ago, and I think he died from PTSD from those
Wow.
times of Mau Mau and all that war. And as a boy, I knew he was violent towards my grandmother, and he was. I think after that he just drowned himself into religion and praying, which somehow
Wow.
helped. But I'm wondering, as in, how do men be aware, like you're saying, the awareness that we've come up from a culture of violence, from slavery to colonization to Kenya fighting for independence, whether it's Mau Mau, whether it's all this section of people across Kenya and also across Africa. So there's this perpetual violence from imetoka slavery, imeingia colonization. Then after that, the people who took power became also violent. And these are just a few men, whether presidents, who perpetuate violence through corruption, through taking people's land. So by the time my grandfather or even my father are growing up, they're not aware of this violence that is so crazy. And the
Mm.
violence goes even into school. I'm sure you've had this. And I was shocked when they were trying to reintroduce caning in school. And I'm like, what? So again, this is another violence being introduced. And there's an aspect of, it doesn't matter where you study, you're given the same exam in class 8
Yeah.
and form 4.
Yeah.
So there is a violence of inequality applied to men.
Yes. Yes.
Then for me growing up, of course, when I was young, and that's the struggle even I think for most men, even me, how do I speak up and find the strength to stand up for myself? Because when you speak up, generally African parents will say, please, that's your story familiar, keep it in. Because growing up,
Yeah.
I could see my mother was struggling with alcoholic then, and she would come home midnight or 1 a.m. and my uncles would completely beat her, ile kumchapa yani kabisa. And I'm 8, no, 9, 10, 11, 12 until I moved. And I see that, of course, I see this, it happens every day until I moved out. Then, of course, my mom transformed. But you see, this is a traumatic experience. And this, this is your mom and your
Mm.
dad is not there. So these are your uncles.
Mm.
And no one mentions anything. No one says
Mm.
about anything. And because my mom, I met her later when I was think 9 years, because when I was born, things happened. She wasn't there until in my 9 years. And so for me, even it took me until when I was 30, that and I was like, there was something wrong then.
Mm.
And even when I'm, of course, in a early teenage years
Mm.
dating and trying, sometimes I'm like, I don't know who I am. So the women I'm dating, sometimes I would be not physically, but just sometimes aggressive. And not because I'm an
Mm.
aggressive person, but I wasn't aware. And now when you look at generally at the Kenyan system, and even in the world, there is this violence that men's body and mind have been brutalized. So by the time when you talk of domestic violence, talk of suicide. So I don't know how should men approach this aspect of violence, because I think it's quite prevalent in, because even when now that I've lived in New Zealand, of course I'm a bit aware and I'm reading and I'm researching because what the job I'm doing. But when I look at comedy, even just those short clips on Instagram with akina cartoon comedian or akina Jugu short, all those people, people would post something either aggressively, someone has hit someone and they've fallen down or something aggressive, and I'm like, violence has become part of us that you're so desensitized that it's in our comedy, it's in our expression, it's in our politics, it's in our careers. But now that I'm more aware, when I see things like that, I'm like, no, this is not right. But even sometimes when you comment and inbox, someone say, don't you think you're perpetuating a sense of violence? They're like, what? This is comedy. So I don't know where it's a big question. How do men start? I think the awareness that we've grown, most of us, if not all of us, grown up in a place from a place of violence. And so when we express it, we're even desensitized. When you see someone die or being shot, you're like, ah. So I don't know, how do men heal? How do men become aware of where they are at?
Ooh, it's a
I know it's
massive,
a big question here.
yeah. The things are many, and I mean, I could only mention a few,
Yeah.
but you know, this is collective trauma. This is collective trauma that has started such a long time ago. And it is connected to exploitation of labor. It is connected uh, to political violence. It's connected to resources. You see, for example, a small example is like what's happening in DRC with the
Mm.
minerals and everything. Um, the people who are rebels in Eastern DRC who are trying to sort of, you know, guard these spaces where minerals are being mined are boys. They're young boys, you know. They're being used by other organizations, mostly outside the country, to guard
Oh.
these places.
Mm.
In Rwanda, when the genocide was happening, most people who were being used by the government and everybody else were boys, young, really young boys. It's never old men. It's always young boys, you know. Um, in Cameroon right now, where there's a lot of chaos around the Anglophone and the Francophones, it's the young boys. Those are the people who are being used to hack each other to death, you know. In Chad right now, even when recently, like they
Yeah,
lost
reason.
the president, the son, The people who are the rebels, they are young folks, bro. Like they're just young folks. In South Sudan, the same thing. Like Northern Uganda, the same thing. Even in our situation here, when we faced 2007, the post-election violence, it wasn't old guys going out there with pangas, just old young folks, really, really young folks, you know. So the system knows where the power lies. They know the power of an independent, free man. They know the power, and they also know we are a massive pool of energy, so much powerful energy, so much that they know if I get this person at a young age and use his mind, I can do anything I want with him for the rest of my life, for the
Yeah,
rest of his life, you know. So it's our power that is being used against us. And this has been institutionalized so much that it has become automatic, you know.
mhm,
You know, the way like you wake up and when you think of who a man is, there is already a picture in your mind. It's so automated, man. You know, so much that when you don't achieve that thing, you don't feel like you're a man enough. And it is so crazy because, you know, me, when I look at myself, I'm like, I just want to leave this world as a peaceful person, and I don't need to dominate another human being so that to show them I'm strong, I'm mighty, and all that. I don't have to speak in a deep voice to be like, you know, like I just want to be, man. Like I just want to be. This whole thing of, oh, you know, you need to have this, you have to have that, so that, you know, man, blah, blah, blah. It's too much chaos. Like it's too much responsibility. So I feel we need to borrow a leaf from feminism, and this has to be a very large leaf from feminism.
very,
I have
yeah,
grown, yeah, I've been a bit lucky to work with feminist groups, and let me tell you, like I have learned so much about being a man from women, more than I have learned from men,
on the men.
because of how women would come together to discuss real issues about what's really going on in their lives, you know? And it's very rare to get men doing that. Very, very rare, you know? It's easier to get men to sitting down talking about how they're going to split land, or they're going to fight somewhere, or they're going to take over something, you know. It's not like mostly at the to kujenga community, you know.
Yeah.
You don't. It's very rare. Those things are rare, really rare, man. So for me, feminism growing is gonna have to push us to think, and for me that's one of the reasons I really really support feminism, because it's going to continue pushing men to think otherwise, you know. At
Mm.
some point we are gonna be outnumbered, we are gonna be defeated, because violence, it will get to a point where the violence just won't work anymore, and we won't know
Completely.
what to do. Yeah, we won't know what to do with ourselves, you know. So of course I know it's a long way out still right now. And the other thing is our brains are simulation machines. We learn by what we see from childhood up to even all adulthood. We learn from what we see. So if boys continue seeing unhealthy models of masculinity, the cycle is going to continue. So it's like you and I, who are getting enlightened and we are having this information, we have to be the spreaders of this gospel that masculinity means something different from what you guys are being taught. Like, yo, I've been there, I've done that, it's not working. You know, we have to tell the stories. We have to do these IG lives. We have to write on our Facebook pages. We have to record podcasts. We have to fund films. We have to do everything within our capacity to tell these stories, to get to 3, 4, 5, 6 boys, 7, 8, 9, 10 men. And of course they resist. I get all
Oh,
this
yeah.
resistance.
Copy.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
it's crazy. Yeah, man. Like people look at you like you must be crazy, bro. Like, what are you talking about? And I get cyberbullied even today. Like I put out a tweet and some dudes were just all over the place on the comments and everything. I'm used to it because I'm like, you guys don't get it right now, but you're actually digging graves for your own children, and that those are the people I'm trying to save because you guys, you can't be saved right now, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I'm thinking about 20 years from now. I'm thinking about 50 years from now. What kind of Africa do I want to see? So when they go back to history, they will find my words. They will find my work. Somebody did something to change this world, this community, this environment. They will have somewhere to start. So we need we are going to be those historians. These documentations, this is what people will use for research tomorrow when they're trying to understand us. Because actually, I've been like, because I've had to be forced to read so much to understand this topic of masculinity. Very little has been written about African men, man. Like very, very, very little in research work. Very little. Yeah, and the stuff that is there, you have to pay heavily for it because it's academia, and
Mm.
the language is also almost very inaccessible. So I have to like go over and beyond to spend so much time before I read it and translate it and make it simple in a way that I can communicate it. Because that is where those are where the secrets are. It's in the complexity. So if
Yeah.
we do not people who get themselves down to understand the complexity, nobody will simplify this stuff for us. So it's a lot of work, and I think at some point, somebody also still has to get back to themselves, and you gotta ask yourself, like, really, what life do you want to live? What kind of life do you really want to live? People don't never ask themselves that question. It's
Mm.
almost like we just go along with what we've found here. Oh, so women are treated like this, men are supposed to be like that. We don't question it. We're just going, you know. And that mass psychology, that mob psychology, is such a powerful tool for violence because the people injecting that poison upon the masses are using it in the wrong way. So, man, there's a lot of work.
Yeah, and a quick one I want to ask because I see so like one of my friends on Facebook, he's saying he's trying to support men and everything. But I noticed in his post he kept saying, "Oh, the boy child has been left behind. These women are taking over. These women are taking over." So I commented and I inboxed him, Gambia, instead of attacking women and attacking feminists, why don't you focus on building men? Because men, we are supposed to be there for younger men and younger boys. But I found with him, and I'm sure you've experienced this. Quite a number of men are like anti-feminist completely. They're like this feminist, and even for him, his intentions are good, I would think. But instead of just progressively putting out stuff that encourage men and boys, is like, oh, the boy child has been left behind. And I was saying, so I was telling him, and I inboxed him. I say, in reality, as you look even across the world, women have not overtaken men. Especially even in Kenya, if you go to the slums, women are still struggling. If you go to rural areas, if you go even when I was in Liberia, even still in Rwanda, those who are in the peripheral of in the Shadzuko, they're still behind. But you see these men, I would say, who are in the urban area, will be like, oh, boy child has been left behind. We need to create safe places for boys, which is okay, that's fine. But I don't know, why do men find it hard to just say, okay, I'm promoting boy child and boy child, and in the sense I can still promote feminism. But why do they find it so hard? They have to push back against women and feminism and saying
Yeah.
feminism. So I don't know, because I'm like, is it insecurity? Is it because, like you're saying, we're used to being told we are the powerful? When you see women saying, we are creating safe places and you're pushing for women's rights and everything, men feel triggered, feel attacked. I don't know where is this coming from.
So I have hypothesized. I like hypothesizing a lot. Um, Religion has played such a humongous role in creating that chaos. And in while I was researching for my podcast, like one of my first episodes, I was talking about the politics of the African man's body. And I found something for the first time in my life. I read something in the Bible that really made me think. It was in the book of Genesis. Just you wouldn't even imagine such a thing would be there. But as the story goes, when Adam and Eve fell, the fall of man in Genesis 3, they
Mm,
were punished, right? Why were they punished? They were being punished for getting knowledge, basically. If we think about it, they were being punished for getting knowledge, for knowing good and bad. And the first thing was when God called Adam, why did you do this? He pointed a finger at Eve.
mhm,
That is one, right? And then when the punishments came, the man was told that he's gonna sweat to eat. He's gonna till the land, right? But how did that really manifest in day-to-day life? How that manifested is men took it upon themselves to own the land because they are
mhm,
the ones tilling the land, right? And if you look at the political side of it, it's now that place is ours, and it is a boy who will inherit, and another boy who will inherit after that. That is very powerful. That is very, very powerful. When it came to the punishments women were being given, one was like you're gonna face, this is Genesis 3:15 thereabout. You're gonna face pain during child labor. Already
mhm,
that touches your body, right? Pain in your body. And then, of course, there'll be like an enmity between the offspring of the woman and snakes. And then the third, which is for me the most powerful, apparently, God told Eve that her desire will always be for her husband. That is a very powerful phrase, bro. Because essentially that is what sets precedence to how women are socialized from such a young age to believe that all their life, their desire, the epitome of their desire is to satisfy a man so that a man can love them. Bro. And on the opposite side, it is the man just sitting there knowing the
and the
woman will
woman did
desire.
everything.
That is so powerful. And it's a recurrent theme throughout this, especially Abrahamic religions. Throughout the texts, it's always the woman is below, the woman cannot speak, the woman shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this around where men are, you shouldn't do this. And now that became intertwined with our African cultures very easy, very easily, and I mean even previously actually for most parts, our cultures were actually really patriarchal. We don't talk about that part
Mm,
because the way even kingdoms were set up, most times you heard of kings most times,
mm,
and chiefs actually most times there were very few women here and there who had these positions of power. So our social setup was so ripe for religion to come in because religion was also very patriarchal. The white man was very patriarchal. He wanted to isolate people, and the systems we had here was very easy. It was very easy to pick that fire up. Um, so I see where we are struggling with that because when you tell a child that this is what a girl is supposed to be, this is what a boy is supposed to be, that gets stuck. They don't know anything else. They are
mm,
5, 4, 3 years old, and then they grow also watching what they've been told being played out with adults. You can't convince that person at 30 years old that there is something different. No
different.
way. No way. So it comes from that early socialization. Those are very powerful things we tell kids, man, like very powerful things. And it is even more powerful that we do them. We treat women in a certain way. I mean, if you grow up every time, women around you are always serving men. You never see men serving women. You never see men getting into the kitchen and cooking. You never see that. You never see women having an opportunity to go to work to actually also bring a surmountable income to the house. They have to fight for that right. For most women, those very women you're talking about in Liberia, those women living in farmlands in African places, it's crazy. And you see, these men who say about feminism, they are very privileged men. They are privileged
Oh,
men
fair.
who, yeah, have access to internet. They have access to English. They have access to Eurocentric clothing and fashion and entertainment. That's what they are. That's what's eating them. That's what they are seeing. They don't get outside Nairobi to see what's the situation really is. They don't get outside Kigali. They don't get outside Yaoundé. They don't get outside Rabat. To the rural where the shit is really happening. They have no idea what's really
Oh,
going on. So it's just privileged talk.
yeah, and that becomes, yeah, so, and because even for me, it took me, I think when I was in my 20s, I was anti-feminism and I was like, what is this? It took a lot of work to say, why,
Yeah.
when I read stuff from some pages I follow on feminism, I'm like, why is this making me uncomfortable? When a woman
Yeah.
feels empowered or when a woman speaks, I was like, it has nothing to do with the woman. It has to everything to do with my insecurities and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, because it's been interesting even for me before getting married and just having conversation with now my wife and everything. And so we've had to transition quite a bit because one of the things she was asking, when we get to the house, because of course she's white, I'm Kenyan, and it's like, are you
Yeah.
going, but the idea of an African man, even in the Western societies, these men are aggressive, African men are aggressive, they're this, and so she's like, are you going to be cooking? Are you going to wash utensils? Are you going to clean the house? So in my mind, of course, I've lived alone. So in my mind, of course, I've done a bit of work. So for a long
Yeah.
time, I didn't answer her. I was like, what is this question? But then,
Yeah.
of course, digging deep is just because of men she grew around with. I was like, so I was telling her, Sally, when I get in the house, am I going to eat in that house? So I have to cook. Am I going to step in that house? In my mind, I was like, it's not even a thought. When I get in
Yeah.
that space, this is our house. Cooking, cleaning, that shouldn't even be. But for her, it was
Yeah.
a topic of discussion. But I understood based on sometime with perception and everything,
The
where we
stereotypes. Yeah.
stereotype that if you don't put in the work, it becomes quite a bit hard. And what some of my ladies' friends, some in Kenya, during I think in the last 2, 3 months, I'm sure you remember the story of Shafi, and there was this thing
The
about
other.
some of the comments you said. And so the big question, most of them were inboxing me and asking me, why is it that men are not standing up for women in this regard? And so
Mm.
I didn't have an answer at first. I was like, oh, Mark, you and your friends, and even those, whether in New Zealand or here, why are you guys not standing up for women? Why are you not condemning this rape culture? And that
Yeah.
brings me to, it's a big question, but I want to tap into your mind. Because I was talking to one of my ladies' friends, and I said, when you call it, and you can educate me in this space. I was saying, could it be from the place where you say it's end rape culture, could it be also for some men that they're wondering, what does it, when you call it culture, it means something that is unanimously agreed and is something, why don't we just call it, let's end rape? Then you're able to get more people. And like I shared on, when I inboxed you the first time, like even for me, it is something I'm still healing from the trauma, having a girlfriend and she's sexually abused when you're there. I don't know. I think I knew from then my life changed a bit because I felt helpless. I felt I can't even express the pain being where you can't. And these are men violently abusing
Mm.
the girl you love. And then, but still, I would say I'm still doing the work in terms of healing. But so I shared with her my story. I said, even for me, don't you think there is a conversation that still, I said, I'm still also processing this. So even when I hear of rape and everything, even if I watch a movie and there is a scene where, of course, maybe it's just acting, but there is someone is forcefully having, I just switch off as in I can't continue. So I don't know, how do we, for men in terms of sexual, because for me, Not my mother, not my grandparents, not my uncles, not my aunties. No one in my extended family ever sat down with me or even with us and talked about what is sex, what's consent, how do you take care of your man, your penis, how do you exist in this world. I was finding out when I've done some crazy, crazy stuff. So I don't know,
Yeah.
how do you approach this aspect of sexuality in general, especially for men? Because for men, it's been, if I want sex, whether a woman wants or not,
Has
she
to
doesn't have
happen.
a choice to say no.
Yeah.
That now in
Yeah.
this aspect where women are saying there is this rape culture, which I'm struggling with that word rape culture. So maybe you can
Yeah.
just educate us. So how do we approach this aspect of sexuality and men?
Great question. Great question. I love it. And I'm grateful to you that you're seeking more understanding in that area because you feel you don't understand it. Um, so in our day-to-day lives as guys, we are not really worried about walking in the street and a woman abusing you in any way.
No.
No. It's never even a question. You never think about it. But for your wife, it's different.
Mhm.
In fact, when you're no longer with her, she's no longer safe, right? Um, Now, for more and more, even worse off, like Black and African women or women of color, you're dressing up to protect yourself, when you before you leave your house. So now let's even talk here. Kabla uende kupanda matatu, unafikiria mpaka nivae design fulani juu venye machali wataniita, watani catcall, wengine watanigusa nini, nifike stage, konda anishike mikono, sijui nini. Mi na wewe tukienda kwa mat stage, cha huyo maboys hawatushikani. Kuja huku huyu anakuvuruta hivi, nini nini nini, alafu akutukane. Ati hata wewe si mrembo ama wewe sijui nini ama sijui miguu zako sijui mdomo yako sijui nini. You get into the matatu, then the guy you also sit next to wants to grope you, wants to touch you, wants sijui what, makanga kuongeleshe vibaya sijui nini. Ushuke town ukifika, Empress, kila mtu anataka kukugusa, akufanyie nini akufanyie nini akufanyie nini. Ukifika job, boss wako anataka udozi na yeye ndio. Bro, hiyo yote ni rape culture, hiyo yote.
Okay,
Naona
yeah,
hiyo
yeah,
because it contributes to the violence.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Actually, the reason why we still have a lot of high rates of sexual and gender-based violence is because it happens more in small bits than in the big thing. Us guys concentrate on the big thing because that's what gets reported. That's what we
Mm,
see on the news. But it's a buildup of so many unseen things which you and I are blind to because we never experienced them.
yeah, true, true,
No, no.
true.
So tayari dem ashachoka, mwili yake inatumiwa vibaya, anatusiwa, and on top of that haezi endelea kwa kazi nini. It's just so difficult. That actually contributes to more depression. In fact, even statistics show women are more depressed. It's only that they die by suicide lesser than men because us guys
Mm,
find harder ways of killing
pardon.
ourselves. Yeah. And it's because you and I are never really where you and I are worried about our bodies is just work, the labor we give.
Mm,
We're not worried about being sexually abused as much as
yeah,
women are in day to. You know what wears you off? It's your day. It's a daily thing. Every day you have to put on earphones to hepa a man who's gonna tell you things and you don't want to hear. Na si moja ni majama wengi. Naona. And then it's like, even if you had 1,000 brothers, not all of them will protect you. Even if you are sijui who, like your husband is who, he won't protect you all the time. you know. So that's what's going on. So that disease, that virus that is in boys, that they feel entitled to women's bodies and girls' bodies. Let me tell you, actually, this is a real story that happened yesterday. So I took a cab from town and I was heading home, and then because Eid was happening, and I mean, like,
Mm.
there was so much going on, so there was massive traffic around some place called Two Rivers here. And then, so now, so like the cab driver asked me, see, we can to me a different kichochoro so that we took care mahali somewhere huko mbele. So there was a Maram road we had to pass by. So kwa hii Maram, I see two Ndudi guys, yeah, and a lady. So the first picture I saw was one of these guys was holding the girl's dreadlocks. So at first I thought, these people know each other, they're having a conversation. Then, because now we had slowed down kidogo, when I'm seeing like she's trying to help these guys, she's trying to walk past them, and they are trying to block her with the ndudi. This is like 4 p.m. Yeah.
During the day.
And yeah, the Maram Road is just kidogo secluded. It's not a very long stretch, it's just kidogo secluded, yeah. So they're like, oh, si uniongeleshe, si upande ndudhi, sijui nini nini, just a lot of derogatives, yeah. And the girl ataki vibe yao. So I tell the driver, because I just sensed the vibe. I told the driver, Ebu slow down kidogo. So when these guys saw that I saw them, and then you saw also that power dynamic that mimi nilikuwa kwa gari, so they view me as a more powerful man. So they ogopa kidogo, and then they started pretending like they're driving mbele. So tukawapita kidogo, then nikaona bado wanasumbua huyu dem. Nikasema hapana, something bad could happen to this person, and I witnessed it. And I did nothing about it. Mi hata conscience yangu haikuwa inanikubali. So I told the driver to stop. And so, like the lady was still walking towards us, and I asked her, are you safe? And she's like, hao wananisumbua nini. Nikamuliza ni wapi unaenda. So it just so happened that she was also heading to the same direction I was moving, because apparently she was looking for mats to go to the same place. So I told her, do you mind if I give you a lift to that place? Because I'm just going, it's on the way. I'm totally okay with it. So that's when those guys fled. And udem akaingia kwa gari tukaenda. So after akashuka, saa dere tukaongea na dere tunajiuliza, so what if it was 8 p.m? You can only imagine,
Yeah.
that's what we are talking about. So rape, hiyo yote ni rape culture. Wewe umeshika dem nywele, as in ni stranger going about her business, hachuguliki na wewe, hana haja na wewe. What is that thing inakupush unafeel sasa mpaka akupatie hiyo attention sana mpaka unamshika guy, as in it's just unbelievable. So maybe wewe saa hii ukiingia hata tao ati boys akushike hata mkono ama nini, unaweza mmaliza vibaya sana, unajua.
Yeah.
Imagine now facing that every day. You'd be angry, bro. Man. You'll be so angry, and that's why like feminists appear as if they are shouting all the time. It's because we are not listening. Because if we did, nobody would have to scream. Nobody would have to shout. People only shout when they feel they're not being heard. So that's all that contributes to rape culture, that entitlement to women's bodies, that socialization of girls where boys are told, women are below you, women belong to the kitchen. When you want sex, the girl is told, we mpatie tu. The man is to anytime he wants, he's supposed to get. That is rape culture. So the culture is encompassed in the socialization and information and education of how women's bodies are used against them. Exactly.
It makes sense, because even during like 2 months, one of my friends, she lives in Kenya, and she were just talking on the phone. She said, Mark, I've just realized that for me as a woman, I'll never be fully safe. And that realization really depressed her. She was like, I've realized that within this context, I'll never be fully safe. And I was like, and then I realized, like, of course, New Zealand is, I would say generally it's quite safe. There's not so many issues of insecurity. So one day,
Yeah.
me and my wife now, we're still not yet married. So I got to see she's in a friend's place. So she's asking a friend tomorrow morning around 6 p.m. She wants to go for a walk and it will still be dark. And so she's telling my her friend, are you available to go for a walk with me? And so for me, in my ignorance, I'm like, this is New Zealand. There's nothing wrong. Just amka, go for a walk. It's New Zealand. Cases of violence is quite low. It's
Yeah,
not completely
for
gone,
sure.
but low.
Yeah.
But then when I went home, I realized, for me, I'm a black person living in New Zealand,
Yeah.
I would never thought about safety. I go wherever I want to go anytime.
Anytime.
But
Yeah.
I would call, for lack of a better word, my male privilege is telling this person, "I, why is what we need."
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it hit me as like, anyway, I think, and thank you for clarifying now in terms of the rape culture and just this microaggression that happens day in. But even I think because there's so many questions, and maybe we'll do another Instagram live. So there is someone who's
Yeah.
asked me, let me look for. See, how can women, how can we women support men in seeking therapy and community? I don't know. How can
Please
the
ask.
women,
Okay.
how can women help
Mhm.
men in seeking therapy and community? Is there anything women can do? I wonder.
For me, women are doing it. There's nothing like women are doing. Let me tell you, like I started a podcast last year. My 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 target audience is guys, but it is more women listening so that they can send them to their boys, to their
Yeah.
husbands, their brothers, to the men around them. Women are looking for more information more than we do. Women are reading more. Women are buying books. Women are all over the place connecting, trying to understand so that they can support us so that we can become better. We are the lazy people. We are the ones who don't want to be helped. We feel like we know, by the way, this is serious because from childhood, yeah, what you see around you is that men present themselves as the true north. So when a man is presented to you as somebody who knows, you don't see the need to work on your emotions. You don't see the need to question. You don't see the need to feel like you need help because already you think that strength is a birthright. That is very powerful because that's how boys grow up. Like already wanadharau madem. Ushesikia hii phrase, mi dem haizi nisho kitu. You
Ah,
know, you know.
ah, now.
It is so, it's just here on the tip of your tongue. Ni rahisi sana kuisema. Kwa nini? Juu tumeiona kila siku, tunaiona kila siku kwa live, kila siku, so mpaka aufikiria ati mara mbili ama nini. So I think for me, women have really been working, man. Like it's time even guys just pulled up the weight. Yani tuseme hata sisi tunataka kukua kwa hii conversation, tuongeze nguvu yetu. Si kila time madem. In my studies, there's some guy called Michael Kimmel. He wrote a book called Men's Lives. Yeah, isipokuwa hata yeye kama alipatwa na story ya abuse some time back. But you can look him up. Ama
Yeah,
nitakutumia hiyo kitu.
yeah.
So alisema there are certain powers men believe women have over them. The one it is the power to express emotions. Yeah, men believe women have that power over them. The second one, it's the masculinity validating power. Men believe that women have the power to validate their masculinity. So you are socialized to view as women as slaves, point blank. That's just what it means. So much that when a woman does something contrary to what you believe she's supposed to be doing, you force her into where you think she belongs. So I don't want to cook, I beat you up. I want sex. She doesn't want sex. I rape you. I take it by force. I want to remind you who has the power in this space. That's what's going on. So women have been pushing for, even in these like warring nations, a lot of the peacemakers, it's women who are called upon to do this work. Hata hapa post election violence, mi nakumbuka TGRC ikifomiwa. It's women who are being tumwad to those communities to talk to men who had come with guns and machetes and everything. Because I was there, I've seen the work being done. So women are every day of our lives trying to get us to talk, trying to get us to communicate, trying to get us to listen. But hii kichwa ngumu ya bure tu ndio inatusumbua. Unaona? And we are dying. We are dying. It's also not a mistake. It's not an accident that women live longer than men. It's because, I mean, hii ugumu yote umeshikilia kwa roho yako, hautaishi. You get. So, yeah, I think women have done enough. I think right now we are supposed to be talking about men coming on board. For me, that is the conversation I want to have.
Yeah, so I think because I think we've had enough time. So two last question. Because I work within the setting of, so I work with communities here and sometimes churches and kids who are in foster care parenting, just trying to do some mentorship. But also I work within the space of church and all that. I don't know how, because for me, one of the interesting thing, even living in New Zealand, there are some churches where women cannot preach, cannot be elders, cannot do this, cannot this.
Definitely.
So I don't know what work religion needs to do in terms of talking about this stuff where they're still domineering and dominating women, and weirdly it's more women are in church than men by far and wide. So
yeah,
the intersection, I don't know, the intersection between religion and violence, or religion and dominating, and religion and also not allowing men, giving men space to really talk about real issues. So Jesus came, saved, died, alienda, Jesus. So that's the conversation every week. And I'm like, there is men are dying, men are committing suicide. There is all these issues with sexuality and all that. So the church has refused. And even here, which is weird, in New Zealand, those conversations are not at the forefront there. It's Jesus came and saved you, that's all. So I don't know what work religion need to do in a general sense, which I know is really huge.
It's a crazy question, because if I was having this on CNN, I'd probably be banned for the rest of my life for saying it. But dismantle the whole thing. That is just the way out. Dismantle the whole thing. I'm legally a member of 3 churches because, I mean, I've been a curious child. I wanted to understand all this. I was born a Catholic, and then at some point I went to the opposite, like SDA, when I was in my A-level, and then I came back to Kenya, and then I joined the Presbyterian Church. So I remember one time when we were in membership class, and this lady asked the pastor, why don't we have female elders in our church? Mse, zile makona huyo pasi alichapa. Zile makona huyo pasi hakuwa anaongea kitu, hewa tu. Hakuna kitu tangible, because there is no reason. There is simply no reason why we shouldn't have. Me, I used to ask myself, kitambo, like, so like Catholic Church, like the priest is called a father. And yet at home, it's my mother who is teaching me to pray. So like logically, my mom was my first priest. And that was my truth.
And for many people.
Exactly. Like that was like and we saw that in our environment, in our neighborhoods, in our communities. So it didn't make sense to me, and I used to ask these questions all the time. Me hata hiyo wakati tulikuwa tunafunzwa inaitwaje hizo communion sijui nini hizo stuff za kugo hizo stuff me, I hated those classes because I was like, it doesn't make sense to me. It does. In fact, hiyo siku ya mwisho ya ceremony sasa ati tunafaa kukonfirmiwa nini. Even my grandma came and everything. Me, I wasn't on the list. Na walikuwa wamepika home, wamefanya nini, preparations and everything. But my name wasn't in that list. And I knew it. I just pretended, but I knew it. It's because those things just didn't resonate. It didn't make sense to me. And I was what? I was 11, 12 years, 13, thereabout. And I had questions that I couldn't ask anybody. Huyo sister alikuwa anatufunza, tulikuwa tu tunaambiwa tuna repeat hizi prayers, tuna repeat, oh, the prayer of Mary, sijui na nani, prayer of nani. I'm like, eish bana, nasikia njaa. Me, I want to go, you know. So what we fear, you know, again, it's a political question in the regard, in the sense that the church and state have colluded in, for most parts, exploiting people, because church is very rich, man. Like, the church is very rich. And to be honest with you, there are good people in there, good people who have very healthy programs for young people. I mean, even me, there's a time, like, honestly, like, church came through for me because I was around people who wanted well for me. They meant well for me. They listened to me. They wanted to talk to me and stuff like that. But the structures, the way the structures are set up, especially historically, up to where we are, there is so much chaos, and the people who do the work, the real work, wamepotelelewa na hiyo uchafu yenye imejaa huku juu. Unaona. But we really also have to be honest, because it is in those very Bible texts that women are viewed as second-class citizens. It is in those very Bible contexts. And maybe for me, the question is, are those texts relevant to our world today? I think church needs to ask itself those kind of questions. When Paul was writing the epistles, he was writing to certain churches at that particular time. In fact, he was sharing his own beliefs, what he felt was right. How that became, this is what all of us are going to take as truth without questioning, is also another political process, because there is something that was called canonization, that process of building the 66 books and all that. And then there are also, do you know, I used to ask myself, so you guys want to tell me we didn't have female prophets who also wrote Bible texts? You guys, something is off, you know. And then I came to learn about something called the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were discovered in 1947 in Egypt, that had other Bible texts that were not in the Bible we know. And I got to hear about the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and other books, religious books that women had written, but had been cut off from what we know as the Bible today. So there is so much secrecy in what we are supposed to believe is godly. That doesn't make sense to me at all. So we have to do away with the secrecy. We have to do away with all this. This is like a boy. In fact, for most parts, church is like a boys club. Hakuna hata kitu ingine. Juu ukiangalia from the papacy kutoka huko juu Vatican mpaka chini, hizi churches za mtaani hapa hivi, bado ni mabuda ndo wana control vitu. So hiyo conversation kama haiko honest, there will be very little progress, to be honest, like little sustainable, tangible progress. Wacha hii progress ya church iko na program poa ya kusaidia watu, wacha hizo ni poa, hizo zibaki. But real sustainable, tangible progress about leadership and about women's space in the world, hiyo kitu mpaka watu tu wakuwe honest.
And I think also the church is scared, because even like you're saying, in terms of even for spaces within the church where people can question and say, why is this, and say, maybe, yes, I still believe in God and all that, but I disagree with this aspect of what Paul is saying. Women should be silent, should not talk and all that. So, but I think also the church is afraid to, like, I was doing an Instagram live with Julian, and he said for him, when he turned, I think 30, 32, he dismantled everything in his belief, everything about his manhood, and started putting brick by brick. And now he's found a space where now he's free, he's living. And I think that's what most churches are afraid. If we dismantle, if we go into the, like you're saying, into the intricacies, what will we find? And so people have decided, watch out to with the way the structures are set up, which
mm,
is not healing for
mm,
men.
mm.
And I think
You know, there was
my
a
last,
time before you go to the last question, there was a time where when it was illegal to own a Bible. There was a time it was illegal, and only priests, which is now, because the Catholic Church is what was the beginning, it was only priests that were allowed to have. In fact, there's a story because it was decreed this is unlawful to have a Bible text that you own, and that's actually still connected to Adam and Eve being punished for having knowledge, and it was decreed. It was so bad that there was a time it was discovered that somebody had tried to translate the Bible and they're already dead by the time this truth was coming out.
mm,
They exhumed his body to burn it because the punishment was to be burned alive in public. Excavate body yake so that they follow the law. Bro, hii kitu ni noma msee. So unacheki information imekunjwa ikakuwa ni watu wachache wako nayo. Actually, I would recommend a Netflix series called The Story of God. Imekuwa narrated na Morgan Freeman. Sijui kama
oh
umeisikia.
yeah, I've watched, yeah.
Oh man, super powerful. I think we need more of that to young people to just be exposed to different stories, different cultures, different experiences of God, just so that we all understand it's not so much about this fanaticism we have in religion. It's more really about living in harmony. That has been lost for most of us, Yeah.
Mm. And I'm starting to read a book by Oprah. I think it's written with another doctor called What Happened to
The,
You,
yeah, yeah.
the new one. So
Mhm.
I think so. I don't know how do I. It could be how do I and how do men. How do we? What? And maybe I think you'd have more experience than I.
Mm,
What have you seen working in creating safe place for men to be able to come? First of all, to even want to come, and more so
mm,
to even want to talk.
mm,
So, as in, what are spaces or what works? It could be, because it doesn't have to be physical, but maybe it could be just a group within WhatsApp. What have you seen
mm,
as worked in allowing men to be humans instead of being machines and being this provider thing and just say, this is where I am, this is what I'm struggling. It could be a boy who's 10 years old or a man who's, because even I've interacted with men who are in their 80s and 90s who still got stuck somewhere when they were 12 or 13. Because even for me, I
yeah.
found for a long time I was stuck at 16 years because of
Yeah, hey.
growing up
Yeah.
in those violence and everything. So it took me a while to be like, no, there is something that happened when I was 16, just the violence and seeing, well, because I lived in place Babadogo, then I went to
Mm,
Korogosho, then I moved to Kino.
mm,
So just
mm,
seeing the violence and even for me going to school, I'm going to high school. So one of the incidents I had and realizing that I'm asking this question. So I went to school in Kokito Silver Bridge. It was in a place called Kariadudu, just somewhere, Babadogo.
yeah.
So I was in Form 2. So I went to school. Then I had a friend had given me a CD, had songs and everything. So a friend borrowed it in school. I gave it to him. A week later, nikamuuliza, hey, please, ile CD the owner wants. He's like, oh, I think he sold it or something. Then someone re-recorded on it. So me, I'm like, please, the one this guy is asking me, so I think it was 50 bob, and I'm like, getting 50 bob was a miracle. So this guy, just because it's in Kariadudu during lunchtime, because he lived close by, he's like, Mark, you want your CD? Come, let's go home. Watch it when the home because he lived just there. So I follow
Mm,
him. I'm like, finally, I'm like, thank God. I go to his place. It's just a small makeshift house, and this
mm,
guy nikaingia akafunga house, so me I'm just maybe we'll eat lunch, then I'll get my CD, we go back to school. And the guy goes to his bedroom kidogo tu hapo because it's one bedroom. He
mm,
comes up with a gun, cocks it, help holds me on the wall. I'm like, what? And he's like, I will kill you if you ever, or you want me to kill. And the guy, because now he's locked, I'm like, now here, it's survival for the fittest. So I was like, okay, ni sawa, mtatafuta do nimpatie, so I'll don't just of course I panicked. Then I was like, if I panic here, this guy and Johnny, and he's like,
Yeah, man.
he removes a bullet and then he cocks it. He's
What?
like, ah. I remember to this day. And I was like, Paul, I will never ask you, relax, Julia, nini, nini. Then he's like, Rudia tena. Then he opens the
What?
door. I ran out. Of course, he puts the gun back. And of course, the last one, if I hear umeambia mtu niko na gun hapa,
Wow.
we all go back to class.
What?
So me, I sit down at tukarudi class, ikiendelea, mwalimu akakuja. This is now afternoon, after lunch. Of course, it traumatized me a bit.
Yeah.
But now looking back, this is now when I was 16, then 16, 17. I went home, never said anything to anyone, never talked to my friends, went in the same school until I moved away. And I was like, how could it be that even something as tragic as that, I never told anyone? But also realizing that my family setup wasn't helpful because they hadn't created spaces where I would be able to say, yeah, today I need just to talk about it. So I don't know how, and I'm looking, and that might be a bit extreme, but also it could be extreme in the sense where men are raped, where
Yes.
even it could be something as small where I'm feeling insignificant because of I'm not as talented as someone. So how do we, in a macro and in a micro, create safe places? Because I'm looking at myself, I'm like, if me, I couldn't share anything. And because also for me, when I went back to school, to class, and he told one of his friends, and he was on his friend. So one of his friend was my friend, came to me, he's like, kwani uliogopa gun? You ni nini wewe? So as a man, I'm like, I shouldn't have, so I can't even share it because I'm like, hey, people will be like, how could you be scared? How could you plead for your life? So I don't know. And that's an extreme case, but I'm wondering, how do we intentionally create safe places where men can say, I think I'm scared. I don't know what it is to be a husband or a father or a son or.
Yeah. What, man? Yo, hey, what a trip. Man, I'm even scared for that 16-year-old self you are, man. Like, that is crazy, man. What? A CD, msee anakutolea gun, msee ameshafunga keja huko. Hey, boss. That's crazy, man. I'll answer with a story. In 2019, I opened up for the first time about my rape ordeal, which changed my life. Two things that really changed my life. Okay, so many things have changed my life, but in the reasons, like the first time I opened up about my depression and suicide in 2017, and then this second time when I spoke about the rape. So I just tweeted. I was just at Mutani, and it came to me, and I tweeted because I had been going through therapy, and later realizing something happened to me back there that wasn't normal. That explains certain things about how I behaved after that ordeal and everything. So I was just trying to connect and stuff. Then I just tweeted that. Now, in the Kenyan space, even still, like largely globally, a man coming out saying they were raped by a woman, that is
Still
revolutionary.
unacceptable. Mm.
Yeah, like what the hell? It was big news, and I had all these media houses reaching out. They wanted to tell my story, and I wasn't in a hurry to do that because journalists are just journalists. They'll pick your story kidogo, kesho imekanyagwa hapo hivyo kama banana peel, you're forgotten, you know. So I wanted to take my time with it, but. Now, of course, there was a lot of cyberbullying and, men saying things like, you are 20 years old, what do you mean? How didn't you not protect yourself or defend yourself? You're just looking for clout. Such a thing cannot happen. There is no way a man can be raped by a woman. What else did they say? You must have enjoyed it, like there is, as in hiyo hakuna venye unajua. But what really touched me were the DMs I was getting after that tweet from guys. guys who are saying, bro, this happens to me, and I've never shared with a single soul ever in my life. And the stories were, I was 6, I was 7, I was 12, I was 15. It was
Mm-hmm.
my uncle, it was my aunt, it was the house help, it was the guy who was trusted and used to come home. They raped me. They abused me. My older cousin would touch my thing and force it inside her. You know, a lot of incredible. And then there was a story of this guy who told me he was sodomized and robbed by people he knew, mabishte wake. He was so mad and desperate. He hired goons to go kill those guys.
Whoa.
Yo, yo, man, like akaniambia yeye anajua how wasee they will never do such a thing to anybody else because they are rotting in their graves. We niambie hiyo anga. So already people are feeling safe to talk to me. Why? Because I opened up about my own situation. And of course, I faced a lot of abuse from people who didn't care about what that information and communication was about. But the most important people who that message was meant for, they showed up.
Yeah.
They showed. So for me, that's what I took from that situation. And now I created, like, I opened up a safe space for them somewhere on WhatsApp so that they can talk and stuff. And I still want to do more. So for me, the most powerful way is storytelling. Like, more guys to come out with their stories and say and make it more frequent and consistent that these are things that have been happening to us and our silence cannot be bought anymore. We have to talk. There is no way you can put a group of guys in a circle and tell them to talk if one of them has not said anything about their life. Impossible. They'll say everything about politics, about football, about sports, about CG, what's going on where with stock markets, anything other than themselves and their vulnerabilities until one person opens up. And that's why for me, I have had to study storytelling. Like, I've gone for workshops, I'm still doing this stuff. Why? Because I want to keep understanding the psychology of words. I want to
Mm.
understand the energy of expression and then the simplicity of my communication. Because I realize most people, all of us think in terms of imagery,
Yeah.
all right? So we need good storytellers so that these stories can be told amicably and in a simple way to get to more people. So eventually, BBC got to me and they did my story and it was worldwide. So the thing with them is like they translate the story into different languages and
Okay.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. And that was like global attention at the time. It's just recently, actually, I think 5 or 6 months ago now. And I was getting DMs from people as far as Mexico and mostly actually South America really did big, and Europe, like people were getting back to me saying, man, this is me, and I have never gotten the courage to talk about this stuff, you know. So when they see someone else doing that, somebody like them, they come out. You know,
Mm.
there is no other science that I know right now that will beat storytelling. We have to come out. You have to tell that story in your sphere of influence. That's how these guys start trusting you because they know you understand the struggle.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, because even for me, I would honestly say it's just the fear of, oh, what, and that's the insecurity, or what if I share, what will they say? And thank you for just affirming that aspect. I need, and we as men need to keep on sharing our stories. Because I guess, like you're saying, I'm sure the biggest critic or biggest haters must have been men because they're like,
Yeah,
you're making us
definitely.
look weak. How could it? So it's that
Yeah,
it's not even the women sometimes. It's
yeah.
most of the time it's not even women, it's men who are like, you push this. And I think because of time, I want to finish because one of the things which I've noticed even for you being a poet, because I think even in Kenya, the creativity aspect of arts, which helped us reimagine a world beyond where we are, is really squashed down. So all we think is passing, being a doctor, an engineer, which it's not that they're bad, but the artistry, which is helps us to reimagine the world, has been squashed down.
Yeah.
And that's why for most Kenyans, and even for me, it was Friday going out and Saturday going out. That's how was our managing our pain, managing our fears and everything. So it's drinking, dancing, then have sex. As in, that's what most we did, both for most men. So thank you so much. But maybe allow me to ask you, what are 2 or 3 things that can help men manage their their trauma, or how can they just manage life so that in a way, what are some of the tips in terms of, could it be meditation, or how can men take care of themselves in a small micro way?
I often say this has to be very simple. One is you have to be honest with yourself. Like you have to be you're the first person you have to be vulnerable to. You are actually the doorway. You are the doorway. It's not anybody else. So what that means, or how it will manifest in other areas of your life, is you will be more conscious about the friends you choose, especially the male friends you choose in particular. You would be careful about your nutrition if you're in a position to check that.
Mm,
You'd be conscious about your relationships even outside men, you know? What is your relationship with nature? What is your
mm.
relationship with your body? We are not taught how to look at our bodies. We fear our bodies so much, and that's
Fun.
why yeah, we give women the responsibility to take care of our bodies. No, man. Your body is your carriage. Take care of it. Look at it. See who you are. Look at your wounds. Look at your scars. Know your pleasure points. You know, stuff like that. Just be a friend to your body. There's a German philosopher called Friedrich Nietzsche. He said
Mm,
that your body has more wisdom than your deepest philosophy. Yeah. So our bodies are the answers we have. And because our bodies have been brutalized from such a young age, we are so detached from them. So that meditation, those breathing techniques, that taking a walk, that having, even if it's 5 minutes of silence in a day, and you do it consistently in small ways every day, your brain is going to catch up with the pattern. Maybe next time I'll share more about how the traumatized brain operates, and a bit of some simple science about how, like, the parts of the brain that are affected by trauma and how it manifests in our behavior, to just explain a lot of this violence and what's going on within us. But I'm very interested in like having more of these conversations with, because there's so much to say,
yes,
and we have a lot to cover, and I'm very much open to even having this as a series, or doing it more frequently, even if it's twice a month or once per month. I don't know, it's something.
yes,
I feel like men are actually looking for these conversations. They don't know where to look. And then the people they look up to don't know how to have these conversations because they don't have the language, they don't have the expertise, and they don't have the background as well. So we are the people who have to do this work, bro.
thank you so much. So I think I'll post this, but also for guys, maybe just tell people where they can follow you, and if you have a
Mhm.
website and all that as we finish.
Yeah, so I'm actually working on my website right now, just onyangootieno.com. It's supposed to be done by the end of this month. But again, my work is mostly available on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm known on Twitter as Rick's Poet, just the same as my Instagram handle. And then Onyango Otieno on my Facebook profile. I write more extensively there, and soon will be writing more extensively on my website. I'm trying to create a website where people can be booking in therapy sessions online from wherever they are in the world, so that is easy access and easy planning. And also, I'll be posting resources that people can use, that would just help them, assist them with just some of these mental health issues that people have in their day-to-day life. And I'm also in the process of developing a male-centered gender workshop, which I'm thinking of administering both online and in like offline, like physically in people and organizations and stuff like that, because I think this is some of part of the gap we are having. Education is part of the gap we are having. Like for example, today, like with the rape culture thing, those things need conversation. We
A
just need to
lot,
talk
right?
about, yeah, and then somebody understands like, so this is what this means, you know. Just being, maybe because I've really like really I've done the work and I'm still doing it because I want to understand as much as possible to share to as many people as possible. And this is gonna be, I think, my life for some years to come. So yeah, those are the spaces that are available at the moment.
Thank you. So I think I'll talk to you and see if, even if you can do once a month and just tackle, even if it's just 30 minutes and say, tackle, like you're saying, what trauma does to the mind and most of men and different aspects, because it's a wide topic. But thank you
Yeah,
so much, Rix. Thank you so much
yeah,
for this time.
that's
It's
good.
been helpful. That's why I said at the beginning it was fast for me. Then if
Yeah.
anyone watches, that's an added advantage. So thank you so much.
Santa Wawero, mnasema gai yako radhime, si ndio?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was trying to
Nini
think of
mubaya?
how to say it in Luo. Nyasaye, Nyasaye.
Ogwedhi.
Oh, good, yeah. Haya,
Yeah,
sawa
nice.
sawa. Haya, asante sana. Thank you. Wazi wazi.
Talk soon
Wazi.
sana.
Thank you,
Asante.
asante.